There's no better way to end the day than talking about money and defense. And this is what we're going to do now. Our last panel for today, we still have night owl sessions, but the last on the big scene, is about transatlantic defense, who pays, who acts. And I think that these are probably the most relevant topics in the moment in Europe, both defense and money. European defense is changing, the strategic environment is changing. We just had I thought, reassuring conversation with the US ambassador to NATO, but we all understand that the US is redefining its engagement in European security. And although that for me sounded very reassuring, I wonder how to distinguish signals and noise coming over from the US. So we have a bigger expectation from the US, rightly so, because we Europeans have been a little bit lazy on defense over the last decades. On the other hand, we have the implications of Russia's war against Ukraine that reshape our security environment, not only in Europe, but globally. And as a third challenge, next to the US administration, Russia, we have issues with cohesion in Europe. So how do we keep our house together in order to be able to act together? And all those three developments imply that we have to do more on defense, and we have to do more on defense together. And this requires significant investment and new defense models, particularly from us Europeans. So the question we want to touch upon today is, or this evening is, how can we actually bear these political and financial costs? How can we navigate our European and our national debates? Because in the end, if the capital at home doesn't buy in, we will not go very far. And I say that as a German who has just moved a little bit on defense. So the EU plans to provide support for all the needed investment, but again, we have these changes that we need to implement, particularly at the national level, and we have to invest more in that defense commitment. So we look at the long-term commitment of European allies to take over more responsibility, and we look at the changes that we have to impact. And I'm particularly happy to have 4 panelists. And if I'm allowed to say so, I'm particularly happy to have 3 women on the panel, because that and defense still is an issue. And we are happy to have you here too. So I have Nadia Calviño, President of the European Investment Bank, Andrius Kubilius, Commissioner for Defense and Space, Radmila Shekerinska, Deputy Secretary General of NATO, and Maria Malmer Stenergard, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Sweden. And my apologies if I tortured your names. And as I just explained, I'm running the new Transatlantic Security and Defense Program at the GMF, and I'm really happy we are having this panel. To open it, I would like to ask you, Radmila, how do you assess the current state of the transatlantic relationship? What do you think are our key challenges that we need to address, and maybe a little bit already how?
Well, thank you for the question, for opening up with this easy comment. I will start with the simpler task, and this is to say that transatlantic relationship and transatlantic partnership has never been more relevant. Because of Russia, war has returned to Europe. Because of this war, we have seen what some people call a fusion of foes around us, which are not just looking at developments, but are actually supporting each other. And the only approach that we can have in dealing with these challenges is that we both pay and act. And we do it together, Europe and America. This is why our goal is that the next NATO summit, which will take place in The Hague in not more than 2 weeks, should not only send a message, but really create the grounds for a stronger, better, fairer, and if I may say, even more lethal NATO. I know that sometimes this word is a bit too aggressive. The alliance will always remain a defensive alliance. But what we have seen in history, what we have seen in the last few years, what we have seen in Ukraine is that the only way you can deter aggression, deter war, prevent war, is if you prepare for it. If you have the resources, if you have the funds, if you have the capabilities, and if you have even the right mentality and mindset. So our focus will very much be on 32 allies agreeing that the threat is too big and too serious. We cannot minimize it, we cannot undermine it, and this is why we will act. And I am hopeful that allies will agree that as an alliance, we have to step up with defense spending. These discussions that have already started even at the forum, I heard some of the comments about a 5% in total defense and defense-related expenditures are still ongoing. But it is clear that the majority of the allies are sending the same signal. Yes, we know that this is not just a number that has been plucked from thin air. These amounts of money are necessary so that we can have the capabilities that our defense ministers agreed on just a week ago. So it's basically what we planned for some time. It's what the SECUR have asked as operational requirements, and what all 32 allies have already agreed is needed. These capability targets are really very ambitious. Some people say 30% more than the previous capability targets, but if you analyze certain areas, the increase is dramatic. And this requires for 3.5% of core capability targets related expenses, and then additional funds also for other security-related expenses. And this is just one part of the puzzle. So we need more money, but we also need an industry that will be able to support these capability targets. And unfortunately, we are still not there. From what we have seen in the past, our companies are still slow. Some of the allies are still slow in the procurement. So this is, there needs to be, and this is what we expect from the Hague Summit, a very strong commitment on increased defense spending, where European allies and Canada will do more. In terms of what they used to do in the past. We will see a certain rebalancing in terms of European allies and Canada taking more responsibility. And this will make the alliance a more formidable military partnership and military alliance. And this is how we protect our values, and this is how we protect our freedom and security.
This is, despite all the enormous homework you put on our plate, a really hopeful statement, which I really like to hear. Nadia, if I would turn to you, the fusion of foes, which is quite a thing to say, and it's not really reassuring. Would you agree on that analysis, or how would you say the world has changed since you took office?
Well, indeed, one has the feeling that I think it works. So one has the feeling right now, I think citizens have the feeling that everything, everywhere, all at once is changing. And they are quite right, actually, to have that impression, because the global order that underpinned our lives for the last 80 years and that has served so well the European Union, but also the US, for the past 80 years, which was very much led by US leadership, the dollar, oil, multilateral development institutions, financial institutions working as a system, rules-based trade. Well, that is changing. It has been changing for the last decade, but now this change is accelerating. And I think that this is the reality. A new world order is in the making. And we have to, beyond the noise, as you were saying, and the constant volatility and news that dominate our scenarios, that we need to really keep a clear line of where we want this new global order to go. And of course, as a European, I really want a strong Europe that can shape the new global order so that this world is led by our values. I think we have to defend democracy every day, and we have to defend our European values. That's my first reflection on what's happening in the world. Now, my second thought, and I took over at the helm of the European Investment Bank Group January 2024. But previously, I was vice president of the government in Spain and also chairing the IMF most important governing body, the International Monetary and Financial Committee. And so that gave me, I think, a very good perspective of those changes that were taking place. It's not new. It has been happening for a long while. We're moving now to a multipolar world. Let's see what happens to the financial sector. Let's see how the multilateral institutions continue to play the role, the stabilizing role that they have played in the last decades. And maybe it is because I had this kind of responsibility before January 24. I had a clear view that the European Investment Bank needed to step up its support, our support to Europe's security and defense capabilities. And the good news is we're doing it. We have already changed the scope of investments to be financed so that we can finance pure military projects. We are already, we have a very strong pipeline, more than 20 projects currently under assessment, going from large critical infrastructures and military facilities like the military barracks project in Lithuania, to host a Bundeswehr brigade very close to the border with Belarus. Industrial capabilities, research and development in areas such as drone manufacturing, space, support to SMEs. Today we have signed a very important agreement with Deutsche Bank, actually to mobilize 1 billion euros in support to Europe's SMEs in the supply chain of large contractors. In the coming days we'll sign a similar agreement with the French Caisse d'Épargne. So things are moving. That would be my headline. And finally, we're also creating an ecosystem of private investment funds, venture capital investors, to invest in those promising startups in Europe. The evolution and the dynamism in the last year and a half is immense. And so I think that we're on the right track to indeed be sure that we protect our strategic autonomy as Europeans, and that we can meet the expectations of European citizens, that European institutions and their governments, first and foremost, will protect their integrity and their well-being.
Thank you. So we have the analysis of the fusion of foes, of the challenges. We give ourselves as Europeans the means, the money to do so. Maria, if I would turn to you, where do you think we as Europeans should focus our efforts on if we want to be still able to shape our order, our regional order, or even global order, to defend our values? So how could we, if I would rephrase it maybe, how can we move from this US-led defense to a more European-led defense? Not meaning without the Americans, but recognizing that we have to do more, we have to step up, because we understand that our most important ally has to focus somewhere else. So what should we focus on? And we're kind of really making the steps from what's the issue, what's our environment, we give ourselves the means, we change the investment kind of picture. So where really have to look at, what are the next steps we should take?
Well, I think there are basically three things we need to do. First of all, we need to step up and invest more in our own security. I think it's the best way of keeping the US engaged in Europe and in European defense as well, is showing that we value our own security and our own independence. And like you said, we have been a bit lazy. I would say that we have believed in free lunches. It's quite obvious that there are no free lunches anymore. I think in the long run this is very good, but now we have to step up in a very short period of time. It's not about decades, which might, to be honest, be needed. It's about years, and that puts a lot of pressure on us, but I'm sure that we can live up to that. Secondly, we need to invest more in Ukraine to also keep the US involved in Ukraine, and we do not want a president that says that you can actually benefit from attacking a friendly neighbor. And I mean, now that we see that the world order is being challenged all over the globe, now is the time to really show that this is truly important to us. We need to protect the international courts. Thank you, and we need to protect the rules-based world order. And for us now, what is at stake the most is Ukraine. And I believe that more countries can do more, and that is the best way of also keeping the US involved. And third, we need to keep focusing on the long-term relationship with the US. I believe that they need their partners also in order to deal with, for instance, China. So we now need to do what we should have done a long time ago. And I also see a great opportunity now for Europe to become more efficient and focus on what is truly important and not the details of the directives, but actually create change.
Thank you. I totally agree on all what you said. There's something that I'm wondering is that if you have more money, are we really getting more efficient? I think the empirical evidence still needs to be found, unfortunately. But that brings me to you, Andrius. I mean, one point Radmila made was about the need for industry to function. You also mentioned that without an industrial base, without the production capacities, we will not be able to live up to that. So what you think we should do more? Do we need more bi-European incentives? How long does it take us to really live up to that? Where do we need to focus more on? We can discuss a lot, even if we have the money, but if we don't get the stuff on the road, our defense will not improve. So where is it where you see the most, where we should focus on, where we still have to do more homework, where we struggle, maybe where we didn't get it? So give us all the homework. All those people can take home to their places.
Well, first of all, I think that what is very important is that we started to understand the challenges. I call it, that we're living in perfect storm times. War is not ending, and it's not very clear how it will end. Russia is becoming more aggressive. Americans have all the right to shift their attention more and more towards China, and not only right, but need, because of Chinese rising military power. So it means that they will diminish their presence on the European continent. It will not happen today or tomorrow, or maybe even not during this year, but we need to have that in mind. And our capabilities are still quite below what we need to have according to NATO new capability targets. I made very simple arithmetics from what Admiral Van Dier publicly says, that the new targets will be 30% bigger than the previous targets, but the previous targets we were not implementing by 30%. So simple arithmetics means that at the moment we are at the level of 53%, 53, what we need to have according to new targets. So this is quite a big gap. And in addition to that, of course, we need to start to calculate how much it will cost for us to replace what Americans are now giving us, in Europe. Again, looking into longer-term perspective. So out from that, I'm always saying that, what we need to avoid in that transatlantic relations is really some kind of, angry and chaotic divorce. What we need to do, we need to have very practical plan how we are, going ahead, replacing those capabilities which now we are giving by our transatlantic partners, and to agree with them on that plan. So this is one thing. Now, definitely it depends on us to have the plan. And that is what we're working. And, we're creating financial perspectives. NATO is developing capability targets, so we shall know what we need to build, how much we need to build. And, then we, of course, are looking into supply side, which, demands financial support. EIB is doing that. And also we need to look how we can speed up, all the processes in our industrial readiness. And that is why I'm saying, look, that we need to understand when we hear, and we need to take that very seriously, when German intelligence service, the head of intelligence service today, at least I read today, is saying that they have an evidence that Kremlin is planning to test Article 5. That is serious. So what does it mean serious? We need to understand that the regulations which we established during peacetime now for our defense readiness not always are fit for the purpose. So that is why next week we are coming with omnibus of simplification in defense, really looking into possibilities how we can change some regulations, which in some countries now, for example, to have the permit to build a new factory in defense factory, according to regulation, not because of bureaucrats making some delays and so on, but simply according to regulation, it takes 5 years. So we cannot, ask Putin to postpone his plans because we have, to do our paperwork. So this is what we are doing, what we need to do, and that is just the beginning. What we did till now, like Rearm Europe plan, financial, like our white paper. We need to look, further into what we need to do more. Next MFF is starting to be discussed. So, I mean, things are starting to be developed and built. And, that is why I'm quite always hopeful, despite all those, threats which we see. We need to see them with clear eyes. Like Reagan was saying, don't be afraid to see what you see. It means recognize what you see, But, usually I'm always quoting Jean Monnet, who was saying that back in 1957, when the Rome Treaty was signed, that Europe will be created, European community will be created during the crisis, and what will be created during the crisis, that will be community. So now we are in those, perfect storm times. We're living through quite a deep security and defense crisis. And we're building something new. And that new will make us much stronger.
Sometimes I would hope that we can make progress without crisis. I think that would be wonderful. Quoting you and your math, 53% of our capability plans, we just read 53%. And you talked about the practical plan. What is the time tag you would put behind? How long does it take us?
Well, there are capabilities which we need to develop very soon. I mean, taking into account threats from Russia. And what Mark Rutte is saying, that at the moment, all the NATO member states, including the United States, we are producing the amount of ammunition during 1 year which Russia can produce during 3 months. Simple difference, which we need to catch up. And that is why European Union programs, which we are developing, here was ASAP, DIRPA, which it appears they were very effective because, for example, ASAP program, which was designed in 2023, when it appeared that our ammunition production during the whole year is only 300,000 of shells. Now we are ending this year with 2 million shells. Ukrainians are producing a lot, and they have a lot of possibilities to produce even more. I'm always arguing, that we can be, prudent and much more effective if we would use our financial resources, which we're spending for assistance to Ukraine, spending those money with Ukrainian defense industry. Because they are very effective, they are very innovative, they are able to produce high-quality weapons 2 times cheaper than we are producing in Europe. Now those safe loans, which we have 2 weeks as approved, and again we are very much expecting that member states will use 2 months now period to really to look into how much they need of those loans. But those loans also can be used together with Ukraine to procure from Ukrainian industry and for Ukraine. So there are new possibilities. And that is what, we expect that member states will use, and will use with a really very urgent agenda. Second is longer-term agenda, when we need to look into what we call, strategic enablers and United States capabilities which we need to replace. Again, we are doing quite a lot here, especially because we are dependent, for example, on some space intelligence data services which Americans are providing. Where we shall start to build our own system. We are building new secure satellite communication system, which proudly we are announcing that it will be better than Starlink. So this is what we are doing. We are moving ahead. It will take time. It will take investment, and we need to agree with our partners, transatlantic partners, but we should not leave some kind of empty space.
The empty space, we could call it a deterrence gap. And what we would like to avoid in that kind of practical plan you mentioned is exactly to have a deterrence gap. This is what we don't want. Radmila, if I can turn to you again, I mean, taking over more responsibility as Europeans without having a deterrence gap and looking at mass, what you said, looking at enablers, all the enablers, be it intelligence, targeting, long-range fires, we don't grow it overnight. It takes us probably a decade to get there. Is this kind of new transatlantic bargain to just hope that we make it to the next 10, 15 years by paying 5% and maybe praying?
Well, as they say, hope is not a strategy. So this is not what we aim for. And let me be even clearer. Europeans stepping up doesn't mean a US diminishing or neglecting its presence, because what we see from the US side is a clear commitment to NATO that comes in parallel with an expectation that we will step up. And this, as Maria was reminding us, this is hardly new. I mean, you would have a difficulty going back in time and looking at statements of US presidents not to find each and every one of them asking for Europeans, sometimes Europeans in Canada, to step up. Also because the goal of a secure Europe, secure Atlantic, and secure Arctic is also US strategic interest, and vice versa. So this is why I started with transatlantic bond being more relevant than ever, which means just that we will also have to contribute a bit more. If you do the math when it comes to capability targets, if you do the math on ammunition, if you do math on enablers, you will see that even as a full-fledged transatlantic community and alliance, we all together need to step up dramatically. If we start creating barriers in terms of defense industry, if we start looking at each other as, not one part, not one puzzle, not one alliance, actually we will destroy the very deterrence we are looking for. So it is really a question of transatlantic bond, transatlantic partnership, and transatlantic commitment. So commitment from both sides. Just looking at air defense as an alliance, so together with all the US equipment, with the US defense production base, we still have to increase our air defenses 400%. We have to double our enablers with the US. We have to increase our readiness at least 30%, not to mention drones and ammunition. So there is a great value, and several people have mentioned here, I'd like to support this. There is great value in supporting each other also as a much wider defense industry base. There is a great value in working with Ukraine, because in Ukraine, the innovation cycle is shorter. They talk about 2 to 6 weeks. So instead of seeing this, as a zero-sum game, we all have to contribute more. When we are talking about increased defense spending, we are talking about increased defense spending by all allies. We are talking about increased capability targets by all allies. And it is only with this really strong investment that will be sustainable, not a one-time decision, that will maybe solve the problem this year or next year. No, a long-term commitment to our security that we can actually prove that we are serious about our security and our freedom. And these threats will not disappear overnight. I believe that we really have a very strong and shared sense of purpose, of threats that are mobilizing us. Many people believe that Europe or the alliance will be petrified by some of the developments in our... It has galvanized us into action. It's not easy. The political decisions are very difficult. We all know this. But this is the right thing to do.
I like this kind of optimistic punch at the end. Before I turn to Maria and Nadia again, just let you know that we have the last 10 minutes for questions from the public. So get ready to join the conversation. I mean, keeping this transatlantic bond, this is what we strive for at GMF. So I'm all with you. But we also have to wonder, I mean, we're talking of enormous amounts of money. If we talk about 5% defense spending, this is not peanuts. It's not that I'm questioning the need to spend it. It's just looking at the economic situation, looking at the domestic situation. That's quite a big number. So, Nadia, turning to you, the increasing need to finance defense, how do we marry that? How do we make that compatible with other European policy commitments, such as the green transition? Because we don't want to have this or that. We want to have it both if possible, but there's not endless money.
We need to. It's also a matter of security. When people are discussing the green transition, I think for Europeans it's a no-brainer. We cannot continue to rely on fossil fuel producers. It's a matter of security. It's a matter of strategic autonomy. Likewise, I was reflecting this week, we have just discussed an investment into health productive capacity. After the pandemic, I don't think anybody can have any doubt about the importance for all of us to be able to deal with health hazards. So it is also a matter of security. There are, I would argue, let me say it this way, in my view, every euro financed by the European Investment Bank is actually contributing to Europe's security. Because it is also a matter of technological innovation. It is also a matter of agriculture. It is and food security and food autonomy. So, the founding fathers of the European Union were very wise, and you have quoted them when you were saying how Europe will be built. I think they were extremely wise, not only in what they said, but what they did. What they did was putting together at the supranational level steel, coal, nuclear energy, and agriculture. These are the 4 elements for war. And so I would like to focus on a word you said. You said together. We have to do this together. More important than a number or a percentage, and I know this creates great headlines and everybody's focusing on that. Europe is a rich continent. We can mobilize the finance. I think it's more the fact of doing it together, so that we standardize the technologies, and this is, I think, the top priority for the European Commission, and to make sure that we have a European model of the different elements, instead of having, I don't know how many, you know the numbers, Andrius. We need to have efficient procurement systems. We need to have interoperable systems. We need to, and that is what will make us more efficient. As you were probing Maria, is it just a matter of more money? No, it's a matter of doing things together. Now, let me end this reflection on a positive note, and I think the European Investment Bank has a very important role to play precisely in making sure that it's not about one percentage or another at national level, but capabilities at European level, and that we make sure that we become more efficient. But let me finish on that. I do see a momentum. I do see an awareness, as Radmila was saying, and Andrius also. I see a strong determination on the side of leaders to do things. And frankly, Europe for the last 80 years has been a project of peace. This compares to the history before these last 80 years, so I do think that Europe will have the capacity to step up its ability to defend itself. I don't have any doubt about it.
Maria, before I open it, just a quick question. I like the together idea, because together means transatlantically together. It means together on the European level. But if we don't get our publics on the national level with us, the other two together are getting far more difficult. And Sweden is a wonderful example, in that you succeeded in in ramping up defense, but also total defense. So not only the military we are talking about, but all the other threats. And the idea of total defense, resilience, taking the public with you, this is a key area. If we don't have the support, we see that in Ukraine, if the society is not with you, we will not prevail. So maybe just a kind of, if you could have, just a very short comment before I open it so the public is not sad, not getting the time. Kind of maybe just one or two advice you would share on how we kind of keep this cohesion or bring this total defense idea, because it's fascinating to watch how successfully Sweden has implemented that and reach that cohesion.
Well, as a politician, it's a great advantage to have big public support for what you need to do. I believe that in Sweden we have such a big support for the support for Ukraine, but also for huge investments in defense, and that is needed now. I must say that I am a bit worried, because I think that the driver here in Sweden and in Northern Europe is the sense of urgency created by the Russian threat. To us, the Russian threat is real. And to the frontline states ramping up their investments in an enormous pace now, it's real, the threat. But I really don't see the same thing in other parts of Europe, and that worries me. So we have politicians all over Europe going to their constituencies saying that Ukraine is fighting not only for their own freedom, but also for ours. But we don't see that translating into the investments that are needed. So I would say that our ability to create this total defense, and we are not there yet, but we are on the way, is based upon the feeling that there is a real threat. But I would say that if I try to be a bit more concrete, we start at a very early stage. We are very honest with children. We are very honest with the population. We send a lot of information. We have this book that was sent to all households on how to be prepared, not only for war, of course, but also for a crisis. And also, I think the pandemic has shown many of us that there can be a crisis that you never thought about, and that you really have to be prepared.
So this is really, I think, a really great example. I already seen 3 hands. I'd collect 3 questions and bring them all together and ask you for a final comment, please. Quickly introduce yourself so our panelists know. And please try to be concise and short, because I see the time, and I might get pressure to finish on time.
Thanks a lot. I'm Roland Freudenstein from the Brussels Freedom Hub, and I have a question for Commissioner Kubilius. The inevitable bi-European question. So, how can Europeans square the circle of striving for independently being able to take care of European security, and at the same time keeping the US involved by buying American kit, American military equipment for both helping Ukraine at the moment and also defending Europe?
Thank you. Wonderful example of a concise question and not a comment. Wonderful. Next, please.
Hi, Bart Shefrick here, JMF. Thank you very much for your very insightful comments. One country that hasn't been mentioned in terms of who could pay for transatlantic defense is Russia. Russia has 200 billion euro worth of state assets frozen here in Brussels, and it's been periodically discussed in terms of whether Europe and the wider West can seize these assets. Now, the legal questions, as I understand, have been addressed a long time ago, and it's really a question of political will, and I wanted to ask you for your reflections on this. Thanks.
Thank you. And there was a third question. I wouldn't mind taking a woman as a third question. Excellent. Oh, sorry. I think we have not more time.
Okay, thank you. It's a privilege to be a woman. My name is Olga Limer. I'm from the Reanimation Package of Reforms Coalition from Kyiv, Ukraine. Thank you very much for your support of our country. And I also have the question to Commissioner Kubilius. You speak about the strengths of European Commission, of European Union, and strengthening defense. Do you see Ukraine as a part of strengthening the European Union security, and do you see the enlargement process as a part of its security? Thank you.
So you get all the questions. bi-European between strengthening Europe, keeping the US in, enlargement process, and then whoever wants to take you want to take the frozen assets? Okay, so you start, and I come back to all of you at the end anyway, and if you want to add something, I give you the space. Andrius, but
very briefly on bi-European. We need to understand one thing, that this is not about protectionism. This is about development of our defense industry, which is special in some way. It's industry also, but it's a very important defense resource. And for, till now, we were spending too little on defense, and as Draghi report is saying, we were spending only 20% of our defense expenditure on European production. So we are keeping our defense industry, we were keeping our defense industry in some way, in a bad situation. Now, second, there are some weapon systems which we are not producing at all, and we need them to procure them from those who are producing them. Either it is Americans or Koreans and so on. And third point is, what, that's for next discussion with GMF, what kind of warfare we are going to fight if we shall need to fight. What we're learning from Ukraine, 80% of targets are hit by drones. British, I understand, British learned the lesson, and this is a new strategy. They wrote the famous 20-40-40 warfare doctrine. 20% of targets will be hit by traditional heavy weapons, artillery and tanks, 40% by light drones like kamikaze drones, and 40% by heavy drones and missiles. So now then, to produce drones, as we understand from Ukrainian experience, is not so difficult. It's much more difficult to have the whole ecosystem, which we need to learn from Ukraine, what they are doing. Really, it's amazing, and it's much more difficult to understand and to learn how you need to change your procurement, regulations and so on, in order to have such kind of dynamic development. That is why we are investing a lot in our cooperation with Ukraine, in order not only to support Ukraine, but also to learn. And here is my answer to the second question. We need to understand very clearly what we are facing now in Europe. There are just two military armies, battle-tested, with ability to use millions of drones. One is Ukrainian, which is defending us. Another is Russian, which is now much stronger than it was back in 2022, and which is planning to test Article 5. So if we would be prudent, which not always happens, but sometimes, we would take Ukrainians immediately to our new European security architecture, really, strengthening our defense capabilities and our defense industry capabilities. So that is my answer, that when, I am asked the question, how important is Ukraine integration, towards EU? I am putting another question. To whom important? To Ukrainians or to us? And I am answering that from my point of view, at the moment, especially looking from defense point of view, for us, Ukrainian integration is more important.
That's a lovely way of ending the debate, and I'm seeing that I'm standing between you and the dinner reception. But I still want to give it a final word for really just a word to all my panelists. By the way, I really like it that you already set up the agenda for the next GMF roundtable. What is the future of conflict, and how do we need to prepare for that? So already we can already re-meet again. But before I officially close the session, I just want to have really a word or sentences of you. What gives you hope? Because if I look back at the beginning of the panel, fusion of foes, not enough capabilities, cohesion, finances, there's a tendency of getting a bit depressed. So if we were to meet in 5 years again here, and to have made progress, so what gives you hope that we will make it and we are on the right track? One word or one sentences? Who wants to start? Maria, because I scrapped the frozen assets. Maybe you want to start and just give us
So I can't answer
Courage.
that now.
If you want very, very briefly.
Okay, first we have to make sure it's not defrozen this summer when the sanctions need to be prolonged. I think we will manage that. Secondly, it should be used. Someone is going to use it, and it has to be used by Ukraine that has legitimate claims. And now the Commission has to come up with a mechanism for making that possible. But I believe that it is legally possible, and it should be done. What gives me hope is that this fat cat that Europe has more or less become has this huge window of opportunity now to become more competitive, to remove administrative hurdles and step up and become an even bigger player. And I agree with the Commissioner that we have grown stronger from every crisis, despite what people thought, and that we will do that again.
So from crisis to catharsis. Nadia?
What gives me hope is the fact that we have already done it, actually. If you look back at the pandemic, by working together and supporting public-private cooperation, we developed the vaccine. Every European had access to the vaccine. And to be frank, and I was at the time in the government, and the experts were telling us 4 years, 5 years, and December 2020, we were starting to vaccinate citizens. So we can do it. I have all hope that we can do it, and not hope. I have confidence that we can do it because we've already done it. You know, it's a matter of determination and doing it together.
Excellent. Andrius?
Well,
Hope.
Hope is always present when we are understanding that we are hit by the crisis. So we understood, finally, that we are hit by the crisis, that there are really defense threats, and we started to do the job, and we understood also that we need to invest into our independent capabilities, or like Commission President have said, we need to create independent Europe. But independent does not mean alone. Independent and strong together.
Stronger together?
You mentioned that I have been too optimistic. So
No, I didn't say that. I really liked it because you can be easily
I will
depressed.
mention one danger and one reason for hope or for confidence. I agree with you. On danger, I really believe that there is a danger if we develop our defense efforts in parallel, American and European. They need to be transatlantic, all our defense efforts, and they need to be complementary. But on the hope or confidence side, if you look back in history, you know, ancient history even now, when Europe and America are together, we are unbeatable. So transatlantic, complementary, united, but also in action. So I do believe that this transatlantic action will be visible at the Hague Summit.
Excellent. So united in action, and I think that should give us hope. And if we meet again next year or in 5 years' time, we will all check the boxes or what we have done, I hope. Good. And I hand over to my colleague who has all the information on how to move from here to the reception, and then particularly move back for the night owl session. Very important. So a big thank you, please. Big applause.